And I don't know the consequences of shutting down the American economy. I know eventually it will work, whatever we do. We may make mistakes. We will make mistakes, and I'm not, during this talk and later on, I'm not going to be second-guessing people on this because nobody knows for sure what any alternative action would produce or anything of the sort. But what we do know is that for some period, certainly during the balance of the year, but it could go on a considerable period of time, who knows. But our operating earnings will be less, considerably less than if the virus hadn't come along.
Yeah, look, all you have to do is ask any member of the D.C. press corps because they're certain about everything, Warren, including what's going to happen with the economy. Buffett also said at the start there was an extraordinary range of things that could happen on health and the economy. The range of possibility on the economy has narrowed. He said it's not the worst case and it's not the best case. We don't know the denominator regarding infections, I presume he's referencing, and that is still important. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined now by Andy Puzder. He is senior fellow at the Pepperdine University School of Public Policy, former CEO of CKE Restaurants for more than 16 years, and following career as an attorney and former nominee for U.S. Labor Secretary. He authored the just-released book, Getting America Back to Work, which is a timely discussion. Andy, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
What's your review of what Warren Buffett had to say?
I thought what Buffett said was on point. I mean, he's right. Nobody really knows what happens when you shut down an economy the size of the American economy or when you shut down the world economy. I do think, though, that the underlying entrepreneurial energy in this country, the desire of everybody to get back out there and work, to come up with products that actually address the crisis, to get back to their jobs, to get their businesses open, over time, that will overcome whatever negative effects we have from the shutdown. And I think it'll come, I'm more optimistic, I think, than a lot of people. I think it will come quickly if we can get the government out of the way, unlike the end of the Great Recession in 2008 under President Obama, when he came in and enacted a number of large government directed policies like the Affordable Care Act or Dodd-Frank or the large stimulus spending, and then the regulatory onslaught that happened after the Democrats lost the House of Representatives. If we can avoid, I think we'll come back very, very quickly, as we did once President Trump was elected in 2016.
Well, isn't avoiding that sort of past post at this point after $8 trillion of fiscal and monetary stimulus?
Yeah, that's different. This really wasn't stimulus. This was
disaster relief /
the form
stimulus.
of compensation that's stimulus. I mean, it was just survival.
I agree with that. I agree. I mean, I agree with that to a large extent. On the fiscal side, I agree with that more, like the PPP program, the one-time payments, disaster relief. I think that's fair. Fifth Amendment taking with respect to business, I think that's fair. On the Fed side, though, it's a little bit more difficult to make out that case in terms of all $6.5 trillion worth, isn't it?
Well, the loans that are coming out of the Fed are unlike the PPP loans, the payroll protection plan loans. The Fed loans are going to be paid back. I mean, they're loans that are being made with the notion that they will be repaid, and in fact, you have to have some potential to repay these loans, even to get a loan from the Fed. So they're a little more like the money's used to bail out the banks. Now, a lot of people oppose that because you shouldn't be bailing out institutions that take great financial risk and then fail. But those monies were paid back. So hopefully these monies will be repaid. Look, we've incurred a lot of debt in connection with this. I'm not defending our debt, our deficit spending, the extent to which we had to go to overcome this crisis. But the Fed did manage to maintain liquidity in this crisis. That was what the Fed failed to do during the Great Depression, one of the things that exacerbated the Great Depression. They didn't make that mistake this time. So I think we will come out of this. When we do, we're going to have to address this debt and this deficit. And it's not just because of what's happened with respect to the coronavirus, but it's also because of the the fact that we haven't really paid attention to deficit spending for the last 20 or 30 years. We need to get a focus on what the government spends and what the government's capable of spending, and I think we need to pull back. I hope one positive thing from this crisis will be a bipartisan approach to looking at our spending.
As the
Yeah, and as a
go ahead.
Oh yeah, as a former CEO of CK Restaurant, that industry is hurt unbelievably hard. I know in Chicago they're saying 1 in 5 restaurants will never recover for this, and they're going to have to shut down. Is there more that the federal government could do to protect that industry?
I think the government is doing a lot to protect the industry now. Some of what's happening with respect to the restaurant industry was going to happen over a longer period of time in any event. You're seeing the rise of third-party delivery, the convenience of eating at home. You really weren't going to need these huge dining rooms anymore, even fast food. When I was a kid, everybody used to gather at the local fast food restaurants on the weekends. All the kids did. That doesn't happen anymore. You've got drive-through, you've got curb service, you've got third-party delivery with companies like Domino's. You have in-company delivery. And so the industry was changing in any event, and it's a good thing, because if this crisis had hit the restaurant industry without that third-party delivery element, I think we'd be in much, much worse shape. Many restaurants, some of my favorite steak places in the world are in Chicago, and I hate to say this, but I think a lot of them are going to have serious problems. Casual dining, quick service, I don't think will suffer as much. But where you need those big dining rooms full of people, drinking, eating steaks on the weekends to meet your overhead, those restaurants are going to have a hard time as we recover from this pandemic, and many of them will not make it.
And businesses across the board, this is something Mitch McConnell has made his red line, and that is trying to insulate businesses reopening from predatory litigation. And, oh, by the way, the nation's nursing homes are pushing back against a potential flood of lawsuits, and more than a dozen states have moved to provide some legal protection, some indemnification of nursing homes, either through executive orders or through legislation. But tort reform, at least as it relates to opening in the time of COVID-19, this seems to be a big hurdle towards anything resembling a U, much less a V-shaped recovery.
If you want an economic recovery, if you want this economy to be revived, we need not to put money in lawyers' pockets who go out and file these lawsuits, these massive class action lawsuits relating to the virus. We need to allow businesses to open with confidence and security so they can start building again, adding employees, and growing. And so not providing that protection would be, I think, devastating for the economy. And it would be a right to work act for lawyers, but that's about it.
Yeah, for trial lawyers, yes, absolutely. And by the way, I mean, just to put a fine point on this, Hutton Andrews Kurth, an international law firm tracking cases that emerged from the pandemic, had 771 as of Friday against senior living facilities, airlines, cruise lines, fitness chains, entertainment industry. I mean, they'll go anywhere and everywhere they're allowed to go, like, termites. And so I think Mitch McConnell is right to make this a red line for discussion of anything else in terms of additional legislation from Congress.
And that's the only way it'll get passed, because, as you know, the trial bar funds very heavily the Democratic Party, so you're not going to get a lot of responsiveness on that side of the aisle from trying to limit these lawsuits.
Do you agree with President Trump in terms of anything that would be stimulative would necessarily include payroll tax relief for the year or perhaps longer?
Yeah, I think we should have a test. I think the test should be, does the legislation we pass encourage investment, business growth, and work? Do we want people to work? And if the answer is yes, it's something we should look at seriously. If it discourages any of those things, we shouldn't look at it very seriously. And one of the great things we can do is this payroll tax holiday through the end of the year, because it encourages work by paying people more for the work that they do. They take home more. And it encourages hiring, because it's less expensive for businesses to hire. So it's a double whammy. This is Art Laffer and Steve Forbes have really pushed this. President Trump is on board with it, and it's certainly something we should do to try and revive the economy.
So when AOC says that people should not go back to work until they can call their own shots, that would be something that discourages work. So we don't want to do that. We don't want to tell people never to return to work again. You don't think?
Well, this is the economic genius that drove Amazon, out of New York City and drove the jobs out of her district. And Amazon's one of the companies that's now hiring during this pandemic, during this economic crisis, so people in her district who had jobs don't have them. So her solution now is, well, nobody should work after this is over. We should all just stop working. I mean, it really is kind of embarrassing to listen to her talk sometimes.
And
I don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know what to say.
Well, and what do you say to paying people more to not work than to work?
Yes.
So even with states opening up, you have a lot of restaurateurs and other businesses that can't reopen because their employees are making more on unemployment through the end of July than they would be working.
Yeah, let me tell you, what happened with that. You're talking about the $600
Yes,
that the
right.
federal
Yes.
government added on to what was normally state unemployment insurance. And when that was passed, just to be fair to Congress and to the administration, everybody was in a panic. We didn't want people going to work because they thought they couldn't survive if they didn't go to work. We didn't want them out, striving to find jobs because they needed to support their families. We wanted people to stay home to keep the curve, the bell curve, to flatten it out. So this was passed as an emergency measure. It expires within 4 months. It was not a good policy. I mean, in retrospect, it was something that we probably shouldn't have done, and there were 4 Republican senators who were very adamantly opposed to it. But it does expire. By August, it will be gone. Now, the Democrats are trying to extend it. That would be a huge mistake, and would really slow economic growth and keep the unemployment rate up. I wish we hadn't done it. I understand why we did do it. I think that I'm not going to criticize people for making that decision, that they were in a tough time. It was a tough decision. But it definitely should not be renewed. We need to encourage people to work, not encourage people to stay home and become government dependent.
He is Andy Puzder. He is a senior fellow at the Pepperdine University School of Public Policy. He's also a former CEO of CKE Restaurants, Hardee's, Carl Jr.'s. More than 16 years, an attorney, former nominee for U.S. Labor Secretary, author of the just-released book, Getting America Back to Work. The book, Getting America Back to Work.
I cover a lot of this in that book, and it's a pamphlet. It's short. So, if people have time to read it, I'd encourage you to do so. It shows where we should go.
In Illinois, we got nothing but time on our hands.
Yeah.
We got all kinds of time in Illinois. Andy,
We're
thanks
not
so
going
much.
to be out of lockdown.
Thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks, Andy. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Amy, using the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
My name is David Hochberg, and I hope everyone is safe and healthy. In addition to all the essential workers, I want to thank everyone on my team who are essential to helping me help AM 560 listeners. Every cash-out refinance Team Hochberg closes helps AM 560 listeners lower their monthly payments, which helps them overcome the financial hardships caused by COVID-19. Every rate and term refinance Team Hochberg closes helps AM 560 listeners lower